The following podcast is brought to you by CDKOffers.com. Use offer code BrokenSilicon for 25% off Windows codes and Die Shrink for 3% off all other codes. Links in the description, and I will say more later. But for now, let's get to the show. Okay, and welcome to Broken Silicon, a PC hardware and gaming podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today I am joined, as always, but especially for this episode,
by me, Dan, his brother.
Yeah, so this was a script we've actually had for a while, at least the beginnings of it. It's kind of a more retro discussion. You know, I've done several podcasts on like me with the i7-930, some of my early builds, and we've never really gotten your take on what it's like to game on PCs for the past 10 years. And so this episode is going to involve early consoles we played, early graphics cards we owned, problems we had, some of them caused by ourselves when we were building PCs. And this is really to level set for a lot of the die shrinks coming out right now will be about like Bulldozer, the HD 6000 series, Fairme. I'm sure we'll do one on that at some point. The original Titan. A lot of products from the last 10 years. And I think this is important to kind of come out first, especially for, you know, hitchhikers who aren't subscribing for the die shrinks. I think it's important for everyone to just know where our original opinions came from. So, yeah.
I'll also add, I think it's, I don't know, important, but it's also a good perspective to show like some of these stupid things, especially I did as a newer PC gamer, but
oh yeah, and we try to hide our mistakes as much as we can so you think that we're all knowing, but guys, we're really not all knowing. We've made tons of mistakes, a lot more when we first started building PCs than now, of course, but well, you'll hear some funny stories, and I guess I'm trying to think of where to start here. Well, I guess let's just get to the first reader mail. This comes from Guitar Guy 515, and he says, I'm interested in the evolution of emulation. Game companies over time, favorite game series. We will be doing die shrinks on that, actually, Guitar Guy. And also, what chipsets or architectures did you start on and transition through over the years? That's actually an old reader mail that gave us some of the inspiration for this. And I guess that's another thing I'll throw out there, too. There will be some reader mails here that were asked months ago, and I do save your reader mails, guys, for future episodes if we can't work them into a more contemporary one around when you ask it. But out of what he talked about, I want to talk about the game consoles first. Not long, say mostly PC hardware and gaming podcast. But at the same time, consoles use PC hardware to game. And, you know, I guess I'll start for myself. We, or at least I, gamed on Windows 95 and 98 before we owned any console.
Well, I mean, I think even this would have been before I would have ever used a computer. I think Mom and Dad even say like there was some game you had on like IBM when they were still a thing in the market.
Yeah, they had an IBM PC. I don't know. Did they ever run Windows? I sound so stupid right now.
I'm going to sound stupid.
I remember the IBM PC, and I remember playing games on it. But then I also remember playing Rayman, and I don't remember if that was on the IBM or an HP they got after that.
I couldn't tell you, but my exposure to Windows really started out mostly probably when I was I would say probably XP is when I started actually using it pretty frequently. I mean, before then I would use it from time to time. I definitely had used like a Windows 95 PC before, but
yeah, and I'm a few years older than you. I mean, our first gaming, like hard gaming, I don't know. It would have been in like daycares on like a Sega Genesis or even before that, maybe an NES a little bit. And I remember liking the Sega Genesis more than they had a Sega Genesis and an N64. For some reason, I really liked the original side-scrolling Sonics when I was young. I liked them a lot more than the 2D Marios, although Mario was fine. I do remember, though, being blown away by Star Fox 64. So one point I got straight A's, and then we got an N64. You remember that?
Yeah, I would say Star Fox 64 would be the first game I thought was like really, really good.
Yeah.
Even more so than other like Super Mario 64 I was never into. I don't know if I brought that up on this before. I probably have. But I really think Star Fox 64 is an excellent game that still
it's
pretty
still
much
good.
holds up today.
It holds up. And I was actually, I don't remember the last time I played it. I did actually go back and play it like a few years ago. And it's funny because people often talk about, this is just a random tangent, but people often talk about how games got easier over time. And well, I certainly think some game series have gotten easier over time. Guys, look, when I went back and played Star Fox 64 a few years ago, I made that game my bitch. I had not played it in a decade. And I was rolling over boss after boss, no tutorials, just destroying everything. So I do have to say that I know some games, older games were really hard. And sometimes that was intentional because they were only really 3 hours long if you didn't die. But at the same time, I've got to say some of them, if you go back and play them, and that's not the only one. I mean, I think you just get better at games as you get older. Although I think I've plateaued in my game prowess about 3 years ago.
I mean, yeah, I have too, to an extent. There's just a matter of time where it's like you start losing time to be able to play games with doing like actual adult stuff. So,
yeah, well, besides Star Fox, what do you remember playing on the N64 a lot?
I mean, for me, it would be mostly, for N64, it would mostly be Star Fox, Paper Mario, and Super Smash Bros. Probably.
Yeah, I played the shit out of Super Smash Bros. And Paper Mario, I probably beat maybe literally a dozen times. I so enjoyed Paper Mario back then. It was ridiculous. I also played Bomberman. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember it. I never played it though, really.
Yeah, I remember you watching me play it when you were little. I think I played through several of them. I really liked Bomberman too.
I mean, thinking about the first game that I probably really went through like completely by myself, I think probably was like Paper Mario, at least on a console. So.
Yeah. And so then we got Game Boys after the N64, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add on to that much. I mean, it was all Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
It was all Pokemon. And then we went to the PS2 from the N64, specifically because a friend blew me away with Final Fantasy X.
Yeah.
That's what made us get it.
Was that? I don't remember if that made us get it or if that made us get Final Fantasy X. You get Final Fantasy X. I thought we had a PS2 by then.
Yeah, we did. That I remember getting it also for Spyro because I just loved Spyro. I played at a friend's house at the time, and I gotta say though, wrong Spyro to get a console for. The PS2 one sucked. I mean, that's when they went third party though. So what do you? It wasn't the same developer. So what do you expect? But I guess the PSP was probably the first console you really owned yourself, wasn't it?
Yeah, PSP then PS3 were the first like two consoles I actually played. But like it was my own thing that I had.
Yeah, I remember before that we had a GameCube too, which we played a lot.
Yeah, we played that a decent amount. Not a ton, but the GameCube dropped in price really fast. I think it was.
I got it for $50.
Okay,
I bought it when I was in middle school myself, I think.
It would have been before middle school, I think, but
maybe.
No, it was probably early middle school. Well, yeah, it was probably middle school for you. It was dropped.
I saved up my like $5 a week allowance.
Well, what did it
doing chores and bought a GameCube?
I mean, what did it even launch at? $200 or something?
I honestly don't remember, but I think so.
So, and that thing dropped in price really fast, which is actually hilarious. Because my friends talking to them about like the N64 and GameCube, it's so ubiquitous in like retro game talks now that they like all thought that those consoles sold super well, and then I told them,
"Oh no, that's why we got it for
the
$50.
GameCube sold like 20 million, and the N64 sold like 30 million." They were, wait, really? Yeah, those sold like shit.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, though, the Paper Mario 1000-Year Door, specifically the GameCube Super Smash Bros, was incredibly good.
Well, that's the funny thing is that those games that console did so poorly at the time that now there's those like really well-renowned games like Super Smash Bros. Melee that I think still goes for like $80 or $90 used. Because
I still think it's the best Super Smash Bros. And I mean, there were other games like Pikmin and lesser known ones like Battalion Wars. I loved Battalion Wars. What a unique game. But the GameCube had some really good exclusives.
Yeah, and the game that
There's a reason we bought it.
The game that like tried to emulate Battalion Wars, like the only game I can really think of was like Tom Clancy's End War.
Yeah, that was kind of, but you can't really play it like a shooter. I mean, the other closest thing would be like Mountain Blade, except more linear and without the world building. Yeah, but in terms of a combat system where you get to fight and control people, there was another game on PS2. It was like I think it was a launch PS2 game. I certainly didn't play it around launch, and it was like a resistance game where the Russians invaded America. It's kind of a Red Dawn scenario, and you can control factions of 16 people and move squads around. Do you remember watching me? I love that game too.
And then the other game that had a comparatively pretty shallow system would be like the Conquest mode in Star Wars Battlefront.
Oh, I suppose, yeah. But anyways, moving past that, I'd say the PS3 was when we started doing a ton of gaming, but also when we started really branching into decent amounts of PC gaming.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about a lot of games from that era on all types of consoles, and before that in die shrinks in the future as well. But so that's I wanted to touch on that a bit because we started. I started when I was little, mostly on PC, then consoles, then we started gravitating back to PC when the console generation dragged on way too long.
Yeah, which it's funny thinking about it now with this current console generation. They're about equal lengths of time, but this one...
Yeah, maybe like a year shorter or so.
This one doesn't really feel like it's overstaying its welcome, where the PS3 360 generation was really starting to overstay its welcome.
So, and I definitely agree with people that say the PS 360 gen was like the golden age of like innovative games with decent graphics. Like, I agree. I really do think people overlook how badly those games actually work, though, compared to the current gen. I know the current gen doesn't have as many amazing exclusives. It doesn't have maybe too many open world games, and there's not like I mean when you think of last gen with like BioShock and Assassin's Creed, these are insane franchises that were invented. Having said that, they kind of didn't work sometimes. I mean, those games did, but
yeah, but it's almost like the PS 360 generation kind of not perfected, but made the ideas in the PS2 generation. I'll say Xbox 2 because
GameCube,
it made those concepts work. Because if you play like PS2 games, first-person shooters, those games are incredibly janky.
Very few of them are good. Some of them were, but that's like you count it on your hand, the ones that ran well.
Yeah, and the good ones, they're still pretty janky when you compare them to the PS3 generation, where once you go to the PS4, Xbox One gen, it's like, yeah, they look better, they run better, everything, but they're still... It's
constant freezing, constant updates.
Yeah, I know.
And if again, like by the end of the PS 360 generation, those consoles were so slow. So I think people really go dig up your old consoles, guys. They are not as fast, and as much as the GameCube and PS2 had a really simplistic operating system. I mean, they booted kind of more reliably sometimes, I feel like.
Well, yeah, that was I think that was when Greg Miller and like Colin Moriarty were still doing a podcast. Like, I think Greg Miller said something like, and the PS3 generate is now using the future PS Store because they hate when their consoles work or something like that.
Yeah, they just didn't age well. They were bogged down by the amount of features. I mean, it's like just take the PS3 for example. It's like, yeah, technically it can do any single thing the PS4 or Xbox One can do, but it cannot do it as well. And if you try to do two things at once, I mean, those consoles had half a gigabyte of RAM.
Yeah.
Enough to say we migrated to PC, although we do have a last reader mail here that involves a console. And it's about the Dreamcast. I don't plan on doing a die shrink about the Dreamcast, but I did put some effort into this answer because I think now is the time to answer it for us. And anyways, Steve Hanacker writes in, he says, I'd really like to know why the Dreamcast failed. It was probably my favorite console, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, Power Stone, Phantasy Star Online. And I don't know, you went down a rabbit hole of consoles last night before we recorded this. So what do you say about the Dreamcast, Dan?
I guess I just saw this question and I kind of just decided to do my own research because I don't really know that much about like anything before the PS1 generation, really. And after like reading for a while about it, it really just seemed like every console manufacturer was bad, except for Nintendo until PlayStation came around. Like,
and there's some people that get mad at you, but we're not insulting you for owning a console. I don't get why people get the.
And I guess I'm not saying that the games on it were bad either.
Oh, certainly not.
I'm just saying, like, I did the math quick, and the Sega made 5 consoles in 15 years. So I think that is a business model that was destined to fail, and the Dreamcast happened to be when they ran out of money to keep making consoles, I think.
And that's what I would emphasize as well. I think when people say, well, like, why did the Dreamcast fail? It wasn't a terrible console. It just, Sega ran out of money. Their business model, they weren't as good at coming up with a successful console generation over generation business model as Nintendo and then Sony were. And nor as good as Microsoft, I would say, either. Like, they just, like you said, too many consoles. They kind of threw too many ideas at the walls. They tended to make really expensive consoles randomly, I remember, too. Like, I think Sega Saturn was, and they made weird business decisions about when, like, the times of the year they would launch consoles, I remember, too, without getting into too many specifics. But outside of that, I just got to say, it's like, I think the Dreamcast would have gotten to 20 or 30 million consoles if they would have kept making it. It was only out for like a year, and then they just stopped making it because they ran out of money when the PS2 came out. And I guess the only other thing I'd add on top of that is a lot of people say things like, well, it was basically a PS2 early. And it's like, well, again, and we're not hating on any of these games. Like, for instance, Steve Hanaker mentions Phantasy Star Online. I know a lot of people love that game. The games were fine. The console ran well. It was the strongest console, I believe, when it came out. That's true. But the PS2 was a cheap $300 console, and it had a DVD player, and it was over 4 times stronger. Like, it was stronger, and it had 2 analog sticks. It was, I don't know how you were going to compete with that and then the GameCube and the Xbox. I think it would have for a while, but I don't think it would have done great, honestly.
No, I doubt it would have. It's just, Sega kind of had a history of not knowing how to launch consoles, and I really think that the real story of everything before PlayStation 1 was Nintendo was the good manufacturer, and Sony completely disrupted the space. Nintendo was the only manufacturer that was able to weather the storm.
Because there were other console manufacturers besides Sega. There were a couple that had several generations, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I guess that's our mini Dreamcast episode right there. I don't think we have enough to do a full die shrink on it, at least right now. But I've had that question for a while, and I did have some opinions. I don't plan on doing any videos, so hope that was a good answer. But now let us start getting more into the PC-centric stuff. So Mentat Tag writes in, and he says, okay, so maybe this has been addressed, or maybe it hasn't, but I love your content, Tom, and great discussions and all, but I really have a hard time taking Dan seriously when he says Nuh-Vidy-Uh. Just saying you both are great. I'm just saying it's good content, but can you correct him? For me, I feel like your content is well-rounded and serious, and then you guys can't pronounce anything correctly. I can't take it anymore. Also, would really like to know how he came to say it like that. I feel like there's a story here. Well, Dan, is there a story here?
I mean, the story is... I don't know how many made-up words people read. When you read about like tech or science and stuff, you read a lot of made-up words and you never hear them pronounced, and you come up with your own pronunciation in your head. I know NVIDIA is the proper pronunciation of that company's name, but when I read it, I was like, oh, that's Nuh-Vidy-Uh.
And I said that too. So, Mentak, just so you know, I was making that mistake for the majority of my channel's life.
Yeah, and it's not that I try to say NVIDIA now, but I really, frankly, don't care that much because, like I said, it's a made-up word.
Well, it comes from, I think, some Latin thing, actually.
Oh, okay.
I think it comes from like a Latin word for envy, I think.
Oh.
If I'm wrong, don't you guys fucking tell me in the comments.
So envy mixed with video, that's a real word. You're correct. I don't know. I mean, I do try to say NVIDIA, but I do just say Nuh-Vidy-Uh because I was saying Nuh-Vidy-Uh for like 6 or 7 years before I ever said anything on YouTube.
I've got some pretty dumb ones too. I used to play Age of Empires 2 a lot. I used to say tree budget instead of trebuchet when I was little.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the only thing I would say is, I encourage anyone to try making a podcast, YouTube channel, do stand-up comedy, something where you speak in front of a bunch of people. You will be surprised how many things you're saying wrong and don't even realize it. How many things even you may say wrong, don't realize you're saying it wrong, even though you hear other people say it correctly. Yeah, so I guess that pretty much does it for that question. And now we're going to really start getting into where Dan's going to have to start taking over more and more. And this more and more PC-centric section, Kiwi Phil writes in, and he says, most favorite upgrade over the last decade. Worst upgrade maybe too? For both Dan and Tom to address, please. Okay, well, we'll be the judge of if we both answer, Kiwi Phil. But
I would say my best upgrade was 560 Ti to 7950. And my worst upgrade was Phenom X4 980 to the FX-8320.
Yeah, well, we'll get to why that was a mistake, but it's not what people think. What's your favorite graphics card you've ever owned before we start getting deep into this?
My i7-950.
Yeah.
I think I got the, not the core, the memory 40% plus on that thing. So I really like that card. Actually, that was my second 7950 though.
Yeah, which we had a couple in Crossfire for mining.
And my first 7950 was pretty close to that good.
It was a lower tier overclocker in that it only overclocked by over 20%.
Yeah, like both of them were excellent overclockers. My second reference one was better though.
What's your favorite CPU you've owned? You can include laptops, anything.
I don't know. Probably at the time, the 775C or the 2700X, I would say.
Like the one you just had. Yeah,
those two are good CPUs. I just upgraded because I could upgrade for really cheap and I knew it would be better.
Yeah, I feel like for you specifically, it's always been about necessity, what CPU you own, much less than a vanity upgrade or having fun.
Yeah,
for
especially
me,
CPUs.
I'm a more aggressive I'm older than you, so I have more money usually. Except when we used to call you money bags when you were younger because you didn't buy anything. And then me and Justin, our cousin, would try to trick you into buying stuff from us.
Yeah, and I think the big carryover is I have an aversion to gambling. I hate that concept, but
I don't think that's from us trying to trick you into buying stuff from us, right?
No, I think the big carryover for me never wanting to spend money is that. But
okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. And you don't want to add on to the money bag stories?
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
All right. They're pretty funny, though. Then we never really talked about them. So I guess let's drill in here then. When it comes to PC building, I actually don't know what you're going to say. Like, what do you remember about building a desktop PC? I built mine before you. Yeah, answer that first. What do you remember about me building the first one? I have several questions. Right, because
I don't know. You were in college. You were like,
I think it was like 2011 when we got back into PC gaming.
Late 2000. I think you built 2011, 2012 or something, early 2012. I don't know. I guess when you were up building a PC, it was like, yeah, this seems like the best option. I can just learn how to build a PC and build, and that's really the extent to what I remember. And I was like, all right, that seems smart. Laptops seem pretty shitty for gaming in general, so might as well go to a desktop and get like a cheaper, still nice laptop, but don't go for a gaming laptop in the future. I guess that's my main memory of you starting to build.
Which leads me to, when did you know you wanted to build one?
We had some components from we had some Dell PC that was
our family did.
Yeah.
Well, I was at college.
Yeah, our parents had upgraded to a Mac. They were retiring it. And that PC was weird because this was when Dell was like a really shit company.
Yeah, it's like the dark ages of Dell.
So our PC broke and all of the parts for it were old and they needed to basically bump us up to a new model because I think they had I think it might have been a Core 2, maybe
Yeah,
a Core 2 quad that they had.
So that family PC, which again, me and Dan come from the generation technically where there was one family desktop that everyone shared. Not everyone just had 3 devices to themselves. I think it was built so that I could do AutoCAD in high school because there was actually a decent engineering program at our high school. And I believe it had to have had a Core 2 quad and then a dedicated NVIDIA graphics card, but I don't know what it had. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if they had put like a low-end Quadro in it.
I don't...
It could run games too.
I think it was that. Like I don't remember exactly what it was. Well, the thing that it was in it was terrible. But the graphics card was terrible.
Let's save that because I remember it working pretty damn well for running Mass Effect. I played Mass Effect on it, and I could pretty much max it out. And this is where we get into your first build. So it broke, right? And I believe it had some type of Quadro professional card that was probably similar to a 550 Ti or something. And let me get to what I'm going to say. Or I think it was just below a 550 Ti, actually. And then it also had a Core 2 quad. I think when it broke and we sent it back to Dell, they sent us an inferior PC.
Yeah. So
at least in terms of the graphics card.
They said they had to upgrade it. And maybe you'll remember, I think it said it was like a desktop version of an MX. I mean, not an MX, of a like GT like 150 or something like that in that.
It was
or maybe it was a...
Oh, I remember. It was a GT, I believe, like a GT 110. I had a 130M in my laptop. I had a 130M. This had a 110M, like an underclocked. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. It was probably like an underclocked 8600 GT or something. Like it was for 2012. Horrible. I really think whatever they quote unquote upgraded it to was not as good as the previous graphics card. I'm sure now it had an i7-930, which was for sure better than whatever was in it before that. But I just do not think the graphics card was.
Yeah. And the PC they quote unquote upgraded us to kept having issues with it, which this is before I knew how to really diagnose PC issues. And I learned that Dell tech support is way worse at troubleshooting a PC problem than a 15-year-old with time to read Google.
Oh, God, they were so bad.
Because they were like, well, we think it's the processor. We think it's the motherboard. It was bad
never
RAM.
The processor.
But my first gaming PC, I guess, was that. The graphics card couldn't render shit. I couldn't use like the minimum draw distance in Fallout 3.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
So my first PC was that plus a 6450. So an i7-920 with a 6450.
Right. And and I remember the i7-920. In hindsight, I know so many people overclocked their i7. Actually, it was i7-930.
Yeah, it was.
And so many people overclocked their i7-920s to 4 gigahertz. It was not always you could get there, but it seemed like almost everyone could get to 3.6, 3.8 gigahertz. And that one couldn't, the i7-930 we had couldn't break 3.4.
Yeah, it was awful. It was not a good.
It makes me wonder if again, Dell just gave us, like if they bought the cheapest 930 version. I don't know, right? That doesn't really make sense, but we certainly did. Even when we got a better X580, X58 motherboard, it did not overclock like at all. It was terrible.
Yeah, so essentially that was my first PC. And then when I did my first like actual build soon after Tom did his, and I used the i7-930 as like the base for my system. I got a better like chipset, an X58 chipset motherboard. I got a 560 Ti, 6 gigabytes, triple channel memory. That was my first build, pretty much.
Yeah. Going back to the HD 6450, I always liked that card. I think we still have it around here, actually.
Yeah, it's somewhere.
That was it was a 1 gigabyte version, right?
No, I think it was 512 megabytes.
512 megabytes. I remember, though, we got it for like $40. That was our first AMD graphics card, technically.
Yeah.
So $40, and it was over twice as good as the graphics card you had before. And I remember just starting to crank up the settings in Fallout 3 and be like, there you go.
Yeah, I could actually play it, which was nice.
Yeah, and I remember, actually, I played with it before a couple of years later for fun. It overclocked pretty well. You could get like 30% higher core clocks, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It could run Crysis. But yeah, so I remember that back then too, that's how useless integrated graphics were, that it was like there were these $40 graphics cards that were like twice, 3, 4, like 5 times better than integrated.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so I guess in early 2012, probably like March, I guess, that's probably when I did my first actual like DIY build, and I just used that i7-930 as the basis for it because you got a CPU. I think I got a used X58 ASRock motherboard.
Mm-hmm. And why did you upgrade? I don't even remember. Did it break the motherboard?
Yeah, something happened. Something happened to the motherboard. I honestly can't remember exactly what the issue was because it was a while ago. But I did a lot of testing when it started failing, and I figured out it was the X58 motherboard that was the problem. I upgraded to...
Which was the second one we got, too.
No, I tried to get a second X58 motherboard.
Oh, yeah.
And...
This is a horror story.
I got a new... I got a used like new condition motherboard.
It said like new.
Yeah, from Amazon. And when I got it, it smelled like cigarette smoke. It was covered in ash. About 10% of the pins on the motherboard were bent. Part of the PCB was just fucking broken off. And
oh my God. Did you actually try to boot it up too?
Yeah. And
it did not.
You could boot into the BIOS, hilarious. But it wouldn't boot anywhere.
What the hell do you think that guy did with that before he tried to sell it to you?
I don't know what he did. But
the pictures he showed were definitely not the motherboard he gave you.
Yeah, that was... I mean, this is a ad for Amazon's customer service. I tried to return it, and I said, this isn't the product you sold me. And he said, what do you mean like new? And then he sent me a picture of a working PC. I said, well, that's cool. This isn't what... I doubt that motherboard was in there. The guy got a strike against him. We got a refund, and we sent it back. And that's when I upgraded to a 9...
You just wanted to start over, right?
Yeah, and that's when I upgraded to the Phenom.
Yeah, and that's something I've always said is it's like, used CPUs, as long as the pins aren't bent or something, are almost always super reliable. Used graphics cards are okay, but I try to not buy used motherboards because those do just wear out, in my opinion. Now, granted, your example had a piece of the PCB broken out. That's not what I'm talking about, but...
Yeah, but I also had that first one that didn't really work either, so... Yeah,
I've had a lot of bad experience with used motherboards, just in general. Honestly, I have.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So we have a reader mail here. A Yborn writes in, and he says... How do you think the mid-range path, i7, FX8 cores, Phenom 6 cores, has compared to the lower range path, i3, i5, FX4 6 core, Phenom 4 core, through this time? So yeah, it's a pretty open-ended question. I guess the way I would frame what I think he's asking is, how would you, in the past 10, and let's talk pre-Zen 1 world, maybe even pre-Skylake, how do you think of the low-range CPU path to the high end? I know it's really open-ended.
That's I would say all of them had pre-Zen 1. There was definitely a lot of credence for all of them. But pre-Skylake, there was, I would say, a decent reason to get an i3, decent reason to get an i5. I actually guess I can't say if this was real or if this was just bad advice, because I did get a lot of bad advice early on. But it seemed like the mid-range for CPUs for a while was the way to go, with like the i5-3570 or the i5, what was it, 2550K? Was that?
That may have existed, but the 2500K is what we talk about. Yeah, I think if you go back to Core 2, Quad, Nehalem, and Phenom, and Athlon, you see the whole product stack was pretty good. The ultimate high end was mostly a waste of time, though. And then once, this is just my opinion, then once Sandy Bridge came out, it was like, oh yeah, mid-range all the way on CPUs if all you're doing is gaming. Until you started to get to Haswell, where 4 cores just was starting to not be enough, frankly, with the advent of the Xbox One and PS4.
4 cores started overstaying its welcome. Yeah, I would say with Haswell.
Yeah.
Or Broadwell, at least.
And that's when I started to gravitate towards low end or high end, because either you want to just get barely 60 frames with an i3, or you want the high frame rates and enough threads with an i7. And I think now in a post-Zen world, especially now that we're getting towards the Zen 3 launch and all of that, it's like, I think there's something for everyone. And I even say it's better than when we got into PC gaming, and even 5 years before that, because before, the super high-end processors weren't that much better than the mid-range, even when AMD was competitive back then. And I'd say now they're a lot stronger.
I mean, and where we're to right now, I think I would say either go with something like the 2700X or like the 3800X. I don't think there's many use cases today for getting the like 3950. I mean, there's obviously some. You have one, but
no, yeah, but like
if you're just mainly a gaming PC person, I think anywhere in that range is good at this point.
Yeah, I think much more so than before. Every segment has a use case, though, is what I'm saying. So it's like it's kind of like before with the i3s, I suppose, in that a Sandy Bridge i3, even a Nehalem i3, if you overclocked it, would get you 60 frames in every game. And if that's all you're doing, I don't know why you need more than that. And I think that's true again with the 1600 AF and and with a lot of other things coming out soon that I talked about in a video 30 minutes before we started recording this. You know, the low end's good. The mid range for me it's better than the low end, though. Unlike a little earlier. And the high end is just, for the right use cases, it's actually stronger. Again, I got to point that out. Like, when we talk about a $1,000 or I mean, like, you can go all the way up to, a 24 core Threadripper 3970. There's a 3960X. I don't remember. The 24 core Threadripper. Don't get mad at me, guys.
Yeah.
Like, that is way above mid-range CPUs. It's like double the price of my 3950X, but it's 50% more cores. It's not even double the price either. And when you went back to when we started building PCs, it was like either a $300 quad-core 8-thread i7, or you spend triple the money for 50% more cores. Yeah. Which I think I guess that's what I'm saying, is I think the high end of the past pretty much uniformly was kind of a waste of time for most people.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it. Is I think the I don't know, would you call it 3950X is HEDT or near HEDT, I guess, but
it's a consumer CPU.
Okay, so I would say the high-end consumer.
It's just AMD can build as a as a workstation CPU because of how much Intel's nothing.
I guess the way I would put it is, now today, the curve of performance that you see with the upgrading of tiers, it's a lot more of a line than an exponential. Like, price performance.
There's always been weird bumps and like exponential curves in the past for price performance, and now it's more of a straight line.
Oh, yeah. So it's like, you can set. I usually would say, if I was recommending building a PC to a friend, I would say get like a 3800X if you're looking for,
as long as it's $300.
Yeah, like ultimate performance or whatever. But it's just, I don't think the delineation of, no, this is literally where you stop, is as clear as it used to be.
No.
Like when Ivy Bridge came out, like, I think you can make the case for getting the i7, and the i5-3570K was probably the best choice.
Yeah.
But you could get to the i7, there would be diminishing returns. You would still have a better product. But if you...
Way more diminishing returns than now.
But if you wanted to go to the next step up, you would be spending like $800.
Yeah, insane amount. I mean, when Intel launched the Broadwell E6950X for like $1,800, that was just hilarious. It's just like, yeah, okay, so now we go to 2.5 times the cores for over 4 times the price. It was absolute lunacy. But, they could get away with it. I guess that's the math they probably said, too.
Yeah, which I remember being funny. I would see like forum posts like, I have a $6,000 budget for a PC at that point in time, and people would just be like, don't spend that much.
Yeah, because like you literally won't get more frames.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like speaking of frames, I mean, how was the Phenom II compared to the i7?
Pretty similar. I mean, I would say a lot of what I had starting out was especially with CPUs, it was kind of just I guess I'm just fucking doing this now. Upgrading.
And how much did you pay for it? Wasn't it like $80?
Yeah, that's why I got it. It was cheap as hell, and
I love the Phenom series.
And I could get I think I got the motherboard, which was the top end chipset for the motherboard for like $100 or something like that.
Yeah,
too.
32 PCIe lanes.
Yeah. So I had that. I mean, yeah, it was fine. I guess I would say. Phenom.
Yeah, when I look back on my first PC, which I got an Ivy Bridge i5 for $200, like a week after launch, which is a really good deal. And then I got a 560 Ti, as I've said before, because I did not know Radeon basically existed, right? Like I didn't know what their lineup was, why I would, what the difference was, which was nothing. It's just cheaper and stronger. But in hindsight, if I could go back, I spent $200 for that i5. I think I would have preferred to get like a $140 Phenom II times 6.
Yeah, maybe.
And then taking that extra $60 to go all the way up to like a 6970 or something at the time.
Yeah.
It would have been better. I probably wouldn't have even gotten a 7970. I wouldn't need it.
Yeah, so you got a pretty good deal for that 7970, if I remember correctly, though.
Yes, I did. I traded. Well, we'll get into that in a second here. So Headshot writes in and he says, talk about your experience with Phenom II. Mine gave me a lot of good reasons to hate AMD for 10 years, even if I would test and use them in several machines since then. So, yeah, so I can't say much. I like the Athlon 2 and Phenom 2 series. There's that Athlon 2 X3, which was like the insane budget gaming CPU for like $60, 3 cores. That was so awesome. And I don't know, I used Phenom 2s that I got for $10 in mining rigs, even all the way back 3 years ago, if you remember.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of like I
have a soft spot for Phenom 2s.
The Phenom 2, I don't know, performed fine. It was a decent overclocker. That's about the extent I have to say about it. I didn't have it for that long, which is burying the lead a little bit, but it was fine, I guess.
The only thing I'll say is I do know of one issue, but I don't know that it's AMD's fault. Like you didn't have any instability problems with that PC, did you? You remember?
No.
At least nothing that sticks out. I remember.
I mean, I was also dealing with a constantly breaking 560 Ti, so who the hell knows? Maybe there were some CPU issues thrown in there.
Which we've recounted this in several previous podcasts, including I believe my 7970 Origins podcast, which is like podcast number 5 of Broken Silicon. It's around there, guys. Just go down there and you'll hear the 560 Ti story. Needless to say, we both went through tons. We had tons of friends where they had Fermi cards breaking. Fermi was not reliable. And I remember I had a motherboard that didn't support SLI, but it did support Crossfire. And that's why you bought a 560 Ti from me to run it in SLI so that I could get a 6950 for Crossfire. Right?
I don't remember. No, I think I bought yours initially, and then I tried to get another one because I was bored and constantly trying to upgrade because I was a bored teenager.
Yeah.
I mean,
and my 6950 Crossfire worked out well, so I think you were like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and the 560 Ti Crossfire did not work out well. It was, I think, a problem with the board and the specific GPUs,
we never could figure it out. And this was one of the few times where we troubleshooted, and we could not solve the issue even after a month. Like we could not figure it out why there was flickering in games on SLI. Didn't matter what clocks we used, what was going on. And I found out a year later that there was a big NVIDIA driver bug with the 970 chipset, which you had.
Oh, that makes sense.
So that's what it was, which we didn't have any problems with 6950 Crossfire, which I even believe we did that. We literally took my cards, both of them, put them in yours, like, well, maybe let's see if this works.
Yeah, we tried that. I tried each card individually in each slot. I tried the card switching slots, every permutation you could think of. And my conclusion was both cards work perfectly fine. And they just don't like each other. Well, they just don't like each other in conjunction with that motherboard.
Yeah, and it was funny. The solution we came to was we had a cousin, which I've already brought up, named Justin. and he had a GTX 460, and he wouldn't have minded upgrading to a 560 Ti, a sizably stronger card. And so he was like, well, I tell you what, and I think I kind of brokered this. I'm like, well, I don't know how soon we can sell this, but I was at college at the time, I believe, and there was a decent at Michigan Tech. I think they called it Husky board. It was like a Craigslist or a Bark board. That's what it was. Which because our mascot's a husky, guys. And there was a good PC modding community in that college up north that I went to, and I was like, well, and I did this several times for you. Give me a part you want to sell. I'll just sell it at Michigan Tech and bring the money back to you next time I see you in like Thanksgiving or something. You know, you can wait a couple months.
And the other
to finish this though, what you decided to do, since you couldn't get 560 Ti cross SLI to work, is you traded it plus $40, I believe, to the 460. And I was like, I guarantee I can sell this 460 for like $80 at Michigan Tech, and you'll have made all of the money back you spent on it, which did end up happening. But you used a 460 as a PhysX card for a while.
Yeah, which PhysX sucks.
I did find it interesting, though, in Metro 2033, you got it like a 9% performance boost by offloading PhysX to the 460.
Yeah, that's true.
This is an interesting thing that I wonder, we would have tried that with other graphics cards. I mean, we as in like the royal we as a community, I just wonder if physics could have been offloaded and given everyone a 30% boost, but I don't know. We're all moving towards having less components in the PC at this point. So
yeah,
back then it wasn't like that though.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. And then eventually I was debating later that year, because this was all the first year. I went from an i7-930 to the Phenom, from a 560 Ti to the 560 Ti SLI. Then later that year I was debating. Later that year I was trying to figure out if I wanted to get the 7970 or 7870. And I decided to splurge on the 7950. And I don't remember what I did with my final five.
I think we found a way to sell it. I think we sold it for
something
you
happened to it,
too.
But
yeah, no, I remember. I sold it for you as well.
Oh yeah, you did.
Fatboy Diesel writes in and he says, I want to know about Dan's HG6950 adventures. To which I will say, Fatboy Diesel, these are my adventures. For my new benchmarking station, I did use a legitimate key of Windows 10 Professional, and that's because it's just not expensive if you go to CDK Offers. They did sponsor me to say this, but I used their website, and it works well. They have great customer support, and if you use offer code Broken Silicon, you'll get 25% off Windows software, and Die Shrink gets you 3% off all software on the website, including game codes. I will reiterate, it was really easy for me to actually set up an account on this website, search for Windows, buy the code using whatever payment method I wanted, and they do have several options, and then I simply got sent the authentic key and downloaded Windows 10 from Microsoft's website. Save yourself some money to get more bones for your dog, and don't stress yourself out using illegitimate keys. These are real keys, and they did sponsor this part of the video. So one more time, that's cdkoffers.com. Use Die Shrink for 3% off all software on the website, including Steam games, and Broken Silicon for 25% off software. All right, now let's get to the benchmark.
Yeah, I went from a 560 Ti to the 7950, which earlier on I said 7950 was favorite card I've ever had.
It's a legendary card.
Yeah, and I loved both of those cards that I had, because the first one I got, which was
Dual X.
Sapphire
Dual X overclock.
Was that the gigahertz edition? No,
it was a 7950 boost.
Yeah, it was the boost.
So, kind of.
I could get like a probably 20% Corian memory overclock on that thing.
Yeah.
And
you got a launch blower fan 7950 about a year later for Crossfire and mining.
And I got that for like $100.
Yeah. There was a guy, I remember I found it. I was like, Dan, they're selling 7950s for $100. They have two of them. I'll take one, you take one. And I overclocked it to match my 7970. And I will say the 7970 The 7950, just for you as well, I believe, the 7950 Crossfire did not work as well as the 6950 Crossfire. 6950 was much better frame pacing, more games seemed to work. It's just very clear that, like, and this is where I get into a tangent here, that there was a multi-GPU arms race in the GTX 200 series, the GTX 400 and 500 series, and AMD's HD 3000 through 6000 series. And then after that, both NVIDIA and AMD were slowly like, yeah, we don't want to do multi-card anymore.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the other problem I had with the 7950, even when it worked, there was because soon after I started using my 7950 Crossfire is when I got the 4K monitor. I would try to play games in 4K, and I have the horsepower for 4K gaming, for like 4K, like down-res or 1440p gaming.
Yeah.
But the problem was 3 gigabytes wasn't big enough.
No.
So I kind of had to turn it off anyways because it didn't work.
Yeah, and again, there were very real frame pacing issues back then with the HD 7000 series. And
Yeah, there were.
Although Kepler didn't have as many frame pacing issues, it didn't scale nearly as highly. It was like 50% to 70% scaling. And it just didn't work in some games. So while I give NVIDIA credit for going for making it work more so than trying to get double the number and it not even giving you a better experience, which AMD seemed to go for. And to a certain extent, I don't even think they noticed they did that. They just got the number and were like, we did it, bye.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we're jumping ahead a little bit, but yeah, to finish off my thoughts on the 560 Ti, that started my hatred of the EVGA company. And I still to this day will not recommend an EVGA product. I have not interacted with an EVGA card that doesn't break. So that's why I don't recommend them. Most of this comes from
Fermi cards, but yeah, they're also the Pascal cards that lit on fire, by the way.
Yeah,
and also I had, I think I skimped on the power supplies on a lot of my mining rigs for I mean, I can't justify. I don't know why I did. I had the money, but I did. And I gotta say, anytime a power supply would break or go through issues, it would shut itself off, and then I'd send it back. The EVGA one is the only one that fried a system.
Yeah.
So that's all I can really say about that. But let us move on to the FX-8320. Why did you get a pile driver CPU, Dan?
Because I dropped my Phenom and it broke.
I want to tell this story. I'm going to tell from my perspective since you probably don't want to. But I remember this was during Christmas, right? And I remember distinctly, we got you a liquid cooling unit so that I think you're using the stock fan with your Phenom, weren't you?
Yeah.
And so we were like, if we get you this liquid cooler, you can clock it 20% higher. That's like an upgrade. And so we get you this like on a super deal, this 120 millimeter radiator, liquid cooling all in one. And then I remember we were on the island in our parents' kitchen. And so like there on the counter, you had all the components out and the Phenom was there just sitting on the counter. And then you just like moved your elbow and just shuffleboarded it right off the counter.
No, it was on our kitchen table. There was a dining cloth and the dining cloth shifted and pushed it off the table.
Okay. So you do remember. And I remember the look on your face and my face.
Yeah, I was very angry.
We almost got it to work.
We got it to boot into the BIOS.
And into Windows. And then it would freeze after 5 minutes consistently.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I guess that's almost working.
Yeah, I mean, come on. That's like an EVGA level of working.
So yeah, then I got the FX-8320 because that seemed like the best deal at the time.
Yeah. She got for $140, $150, I think.
100. Yeah, I think it was, did I say the 8320 that I got for $140?
Yeah, what you use with the new liquid cooler, which we rush shipped. Oh, this is before Thanksgiving, which is around when our birthdays are.
Yeah.
And then we hung out with family and stuff, and it worked. And you did see a sizable FPS increase, at least in your games, right?
In certain games, like I remember at like a week after getting the 8320, I think, because I got the 8320 almost immediately after I got the 7950. Mm-hmm. Like I got the 7950 in I think November or something.
And it was getting bottlenecked by your Phenom.
And then my Phenom broke and I got the 8320.
Yeah.
And I remember the like tier list. Tom's Hardware would publish a tier list every month. And it was like,
Oh, yeah.
like the
back
Phenom,
then, their tier list was so dumb. I haven't checked it for years because of how much they pissed me off back then.
like the Phenom II X4 was in the same tier as the 8320.
They had i3s and like lower. They had like 100 processors in the same tier, including the Phenom and your FX that you upgraded to.
Like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, the FX got boosted my frame rate with the 7950 on Assassin's Creed 3. Because I think the Assassin's Creed 3 came with the 7950.
Maybe, yeah.
I think its frame rate went from, I struggled to get 20 frames a second on it with the Phenom, and when I got upgraded to the FX-8320, it started getting 50 to 60 frames per second.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you were fine getting 60 FPS pretty much in every game, weren't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, as much as people give that CPU shit, it worked. And you got it for a good price, and you could certainly open all your Chrome tabs.
Yeah, I could open as many Chrome tabs as I pleased. To a point, because Chrome does use a lot more.
You don't have a 3950 for, S tier Chrome tabbing.
No. I was at B, maybe low A tier Chrome tabbing.
Yeah. So Daniel Hyde writes in and he said, would you say Piledriver Bulldozer is comparable to NetBurst in their failings?
I mean, I looked into this a little bit. I don't really know that much about that era of Intel. I mean, you might have more to say about it. I'm sure you do. It seemed like, based on my understanding, Intel made a promise about NetBurst that we still haven't been able to reach today with the 10 gigahertz.
And we may never hit 10 gigahertz. I mean, maybe with graphene or something, but that's not now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it's completely a failing of Intel. I think that was just, they didn't realize how much silicon would limit them to not 10 gigahertz, because it seems like the cap right now is about 5.
Yeah, I think of them as just very similar failings. Intel was like, we're going to scale with clock speed, and because we can get to 10 gigahertz, no one will be able to compete with us. And then they maxed out at, frankly, around 3. They got some to 4. And they were stuck at 4. Well, frankly, Intel, ultra mature 14 nanometer. Most things were around 4 gigahertz, AMD or Intel. And
when did they start getting consistent, like Broadwell?
I mean, you could overclock Sandy Bridge past 4 gigahertz.
Usually, yeah.
Oh, much past it. 4.5 was easy, no drama.
Oh, okay. I guess. I thought like 4.3 was usually what people got to.
No, that's when you started getting into the horrible thermal paste fiasco of Ivy Bridge and especially Haswell. But I won't get into that. But I think of it just the same. They said, hey, Bulldozer's going to go to 5 gigahertz and we're going to pare down the cores so you can still have 8 threads. And they bet on multi-threading early, and they couldn't get that. I mean, they got higher core clocks than Phenom, but it was on 32 nanometers. So it's like, I hope so. I just compare it to a similar type of thing. They both screwed up.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know there were some NetBurst things that were a good deal at the time. I remember there were some years where Piledriver seemed decent.
Yeah, Piledriver was okay the entire time I had it, I would say, until I did not work for 60 FPS, though, eventually.
But we have a new die shrink coming out soon. I believe it is the one in a couple of days after this. Broken Silicon comes out on the Friday. So very soon, guys, you'll get our full 1 hour take on Bulldozer and Piledriver. So we won't go too much further into that then. Bootman writes in and he says, how important was overclocking for you guys? Or was stable PC better, even though there was low-hanging fruits with extra watts to pick? Well, overclocking was enormous when we built our PCs.
Yeah. I mean, I think 7000 series especially was kind of legendary for its overclocking, and we got golden samples for pretty much all of our cards in that
I don't think they were golden samples, Your first 7950 certainly wasn't, but the second one and all of the other, I guess you're right. The launch 7900 cards we had were all insane. They all got memory that went to like 1830 megahertz.
Yeah.
Which, just so people know, the 7950 is stock is 1250. So you're almost getting like a 50% bandwidth increase.
Yeah.
That's more than going from that's like going from
I mean, I'm trying to remember that.
like a 20, that's like going from a 2080 to a Titan RTX bandwidth.
That 7950 we had, if I'm remembering correctly, if you averaged memory and core clock overclocking, I think I got
You got over
30,
40 on the second one.
I thought it was like 36%.
I think
overall.
The first one was, and the second one you got, it was like 40 something. You got 40, and we benchmarked it. You got over 40% FPS increases. How would you leave that on the table? It's not like now where it's like, oh, I got 10% more.
Yeah.
So back then, and I don't remember them really being that unstable. I do remember getting really good at telling which temperature my PC would crash at with my 7970. That's how overclocked it was. I got 36% more performance. And I just, again, I really want to put this in perspective, people. A 7970 at the time was the strongest card on the market. So it would be like if you had a Titan RTX and you overclocked it, it's like, here's another 36%.
Yeah, and my 7950, I can't remember the temperature. I think it started becoming unstable at like 78 degrees or something like that.
Yeah, that's what mine did too, by the way. When you had voltage around 1250 millivolts or something.
I don't remember that.
I do.
But
I've tested it across several GCN cards.
But yeah, so I needed to have an overclock that would stay below 78 degrees. And if I kept it at that, my card never crashed. And I mean, never. Like, I would run that thing for days mining.
Yeah. They never did break. I broke mine because I tried to mod it with a all-in-one water cooler and almost destroyed it. And then eventually it just broke, which someone did that with a Radeon 7. Won't say who it was recently, but his still works.
And then I don't know where my old 7950s are floating around now. I think I sold both of them to friends.
I sold one of them for you at Michigan Tech.
And I think I sold another one to one of our friends at one point.
We always sold them for like 120. What's so funny, or 100 if it was a friend. What's so funny is that they still go for that on eBay regularly.
Yeah, I know.
It's so dumb.
Yeah, it's funny because I mined with those cards, and at least the second one, if I'm remembering correctly, I ended up making money on the sale, selling it like.
Yeah,
when would I have sold it?
I sold mine for 120. I think I sold yours as well at Michigan Tech, and yeah, we made $20. And that's just, it's so funny to think of that performance level, which is 7950, especially if you overclock it, is in between PS4 Pro performance. And that's at the $100 price point for graphics cards. That hasn't changed for like 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's starting to change now, finally.
Yeah. And then I guess to go forward, if you want to, what would my next upgrade be?
The 4K monitor, right?
Yeah,
I want to talk about that.
I got that today.
And it's still your main monitor. So you got it. I believe you got it right around when the 290X launched for whatever reason. I remember that.
I got it in 2014.
Yeah. So you want to talk about that, like choosing it and like why you needed a new one?
I mean, it's not that I super needed a new one. I'm still, my secondary monitor is still my old primary monitor. I just wanted to get a 4K TV, monitor, because I feel like I'm wasting horsepower I have with this machine, because I'm pretty sure I could at least game in 1440p with it.
So yeah, that was at least 6 years ago. It was a TN 4K, but it was 3 millisecond delay,
which
so
I
better
had
than
to
a lot of 4Ks now.
Reduced to 5 millisecond delay because I had ghosting issues on her. I don't know.
Yeah, they had a game mode that was atrocious, if I remember right.
Yeah, it like shadows projected really long for some reason, and it was just really bad looking, so I turned it off. But
what do you think about the 4K monitor market now? You paid $600 6 years ago for a 4K.
I mean, we've talked about that before, and
it was a Samsung, guys. This was not brand Korean monitor. It was a Korean monitor. It was Samsung. We ordered it from Korea.
Yeah, and it's funny, the settings on that were default in Korean because it's a Korean monitor, and I couldn't figure out how to change the language for a long time. So the settings were all just in Korean, and I knew how to
control them. You figured them out slowly.
Yeah, until eventually I accidentally just switched. I accidentally was fucking around with it, and it said flipped up like English, and I was like, "Oh
boy,
my monitor's in English now. This is awesome."
Yeah, I remember that monitor. You showing it to my friend Brock, Dark Souls 3 in 4K. And he was just like, because remember, people, 4K back in 2015, this was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't have a lot of 4K displays around. And I remember him going, wow, it's just like Vaseline was wiped off the screen in 4K.
Yeah, and I'll say 4K. As a college student, when I had that, 4K with a secondary monitor was great for doing classwork.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember it was Dark Souls 3 as well, right? That made you go, you need to upgrade processors.
Yeah.
Which was, we'll get to that in a second, Broadwell. But we got a couple reader mails about the monitors, so let's get into that. Blokes writes in, he says, the difference between 144 hertz and 240 hertz is fairly noticeable. He's referencing something we talked about in the last Broken Silicon. But the issue is that observing it requires either playing very old games or running hardcore memory overclocks. Yeah, I mean, if you want to get locked at 240, it's probably going to be an old game. Because it's honestly a crapshoot whether 1440p 240 hertz or 2160p 144 hertz is the better long-term investment. He's referencing the Eve Spectre monitors we're talking about. But I'll continue for the people who listen to that episode. The latter is just going to be much less of a headache than the former. And that's, I think, what we said in our advice too, is it's like, look, it's not easy to run 240 hertz at any resolution, let alone 1440p. So if it's like similar price, which I believe is like a $200 difference, $100 difference. It wasn't double the price. You're going to go to, if they were the same price, let's just even say you want to go with 1440p 240 or 2160p 144. I think me and you both agreed. I'll go with 4K. That's a more standard resolution. And frankly, I think it is overall easier to run and maintain 144 locked at 4K than 240 hertz because you need an insanely overclocked memory timings and CPU for that.
Yeah, I would personally say I think all that means the 4K 144 hertz is the better investment. Personally, like we know that those are going to be this at least close to the standards that are going to be moved.
Resolution maybe for the next decade. I don't know if we're going to move past it much.
Frame rate, I don't know. Are we going to move to 240 hertz as a standard ever? Maybe, but we're not going to for a while.
Eventually, but yeah, not for a while. I think 120, 144 is where we're going to stay for. And I am outspoken. I do think 120 hertz is going to start become a very real mainstream standard. I believe the consoles will have games that will have a 120 hertz option. And I believe that you will even see some movies in 120 hertz in the next 5 years. I think 120 hertz is going to become more and more standard. I don't see us moving past that anytime soon, though.
For movies, I have a hot take that I don't really think we're ever going to get past 24 frames.
Well, I think 24 will be the standard for most movies forever.
Because do I want to spend 4 times more money rendering this movie? No.
Yeah, but rendering becomes cheaper, and I just think someone's gonna try it out, and it's gonna look way better than 48 hertz shit vision. Which 48 hertz isn't fast enough to look crazy better, but it looks different, so it feels weird.
Yeah, I don't know. But seeing that we might be moving to like more 4K 120 as a standard makes me think that back to my monitor, I might be upgrading soon because the monitor, it really is about to start showing its age pretty heavily, I think. But
yeah, I'm really eyeing the Eve monitors. I really think if they actually launch with a IGZO IPS 1 millisecond FreeSync 4K 144 hertz HDR 600 monitor, if that really comes out for $600 Q3, I'm getting it if I can easily get it, assuming it gets good reviews. That's what I'm targeting.
We'll see. I don't know when I plan on upgrading. I would bet within the next I would say 80% chance I'm getting a new monitor in the next 18 months, but we'll see.
Yeah. Edward Go writes in, and Edward G Doe writes in, and he goes, by the way, Tom, LG OLED monitors from 2020 will get FreeSync support in a future firmware upgrade, and most probably the 2019 lineup will get it as well. I have a correction for you, Edward Dow. I believe the C9 already has FreeSync support. I believe Cortex covered this on his channel as well. It just works. There's FreeSync support in there. And I know they updated it to G-Sync already.
FreeSync, it's just a DisplayPort standard, right? Isn't it like 1.6?
Originally it was, yeah. That AMD ran with to compete with G-Sync, yeah.
Okay.
Which we dealt with that whole thing, which we can talk about that in a Kepler episode, actually, in the future. But yeah, so you upgraded to Broadwell because Dark Souls 3 was getting locked. It could not get above 40 frames. Am I wrong?
I'm trying to remember the timeline. I can't remember. I believe I got my 390 before I got this, but the 390 wanted a new toy, so I bought it. And then I
much better running 4K.
Yeah, 8 gigs
gigabyte, yeah.
8 gigs of RAM. I think I got that. I would have gotten that in like spring break of 2015, I believe. And then I got, I think probably around when Dark Souls 3 came out is when I upgraded to the i7-5775C.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that the 8320 was really limiting frame rates. I think I got the same frame rate in Dark Souls 3 from 1080p to 4K.
Yeah, that's a problem. And I remember you just got it because we were just looking for deals and you didn't want to spend much. Now, the i7 itself, if I remember right, was like $350, $370. It wasn't cheap, but sometimes those went for $450 because they were a unicorn with their Super L4 cache.
I didn't spend much on that thing.
The motherboard you got for $100. I remember that was the big deal, and you could still use your DDR3.
I think the total upgrade cost was like $450, something like that.
Right, and much higher frame rates, right?
And that was also probably the era of college where I became a workaholic and had 3 jobs, so I had a lot of disposable money.
You finally had the monies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you used that till you got the 2700X. I mean, Christmas in 2019.
Yeah.
And it was only because probably the RAM was going bad, but it's like, what am I going to do? That's how cheap Zen's getting now, where it's like, I can buy more DDR3 or I can just spend a total of like $300 and go to an 8-core 2700X with X570 with an upgrade path to Zen 3, 16 cores.
Yeah, it was just time to upgrade, and my system was starting to fail a little bit. Like, it wasn't terrible, but it would freeze every few weeks, like every couple weeks.
May have been the motherboard then too.
Yeah.
I've seen that before, breaking motherboards.
Yeah, so it was just getting old, and I thought it was time to upgrade to the 2700X.
And before that I do want to talk about this a bit too, Vega 56.
Yeah.
Because that was a funny one. Because it was not the best price performance, but I remember giving this like big speech to you and our friends group. It was right before I started Moore's Law is Dead, actually. That was a year before, you're right.
It would have been a little bit. I got the Vega 56 in like
It was 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a year before I started the channel, but that's when I was really into PC hardware. I mean, I was this whole time, but this was one of my most into it periods. And I was like, look, I remember telling you guys, I don't think Vega is going to be the best price performance we've ever seen, but I'm telling you, a new mining boom is going to start, and it's going to be one for the record books. So you guys, I just think for $500 with games, and we wanted Wolfenstein, and what else did it come with? Like Far Cry 5 or something? Not Far Cry 5, I don't think. It came with Prey 2.
Yeah. I don't know. They usually came
with Deus Ex as well.
Yeah.
So
no? I got
it came with Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
So it came with Wolfenstein and another game I know we wanted. And so it really was saving money for $500. And I was like, look, this has high bandwidth cache. It's not going to run out of memory. This will run 4K forever, even if you have to turn down some settings. It has enough bandwidth. Just get it, guys. And this all I said. I said this is last call for building a PC for 2 years because this mining boom is going to be insane. Last call, everyone. And you couldn't really build a PC for a reasonable price until mid 2019.
Yeah, and
that was weird, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm still using that right now. I don't think I'm probably going to upgrade relatively soon, but we'll see. I don't know. Well, yeah, I don't know. I might upgrade to RDNA 2, or I don't know. I might wait until RDNA 3, or if NVIDIA makes something good, maybe I would try them again. But
yeah, I think they've gotten kind of enough time out for you, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I would have gotten one this entire time if I felt like it was the best option.
Sure. Which I don't think Turing's that bad. It's just overpriced. I think it's one of their first generations in a while that has enough compute and gaming performance.
Yeah, and I just Vega 56 still works fine. I don't see a point in upgrading. I'm going to stick with that until until I feel like I should upgrade. I mean, I'm probably going to be getting a PS5 this year. I would rather spend the money on that.
Right, because you can still play your games. That's what you would say, right?
Yeah, it's not that I can still play my games. I can still play them, and they look better than a PS4 Pro.
Yeah, once we got to, right about, Fury, just above Fury X performance, which would be, Vega 56 that has enough RAM. Once we got there, I think games look good now. Which Vega 56, RTX 2060, once you get to that level of performance, it's like things look good. I don't know, guys.
I mean, when did Battlefield 4 come out? When did Battlefield 3 come out? That's when they started really looking good, in my opinion. Like that was
it was an insane jump. And games have been getting slightly better every year in graphics, but it's like so slight.
I'm not saying that there hasn't been an improvement, but it's not as stark as it used to be. And I hope the next gen brings another big jump. That's what seems to happen. But
so Dominique Koch writes in and he says, over the last 10 years, what has been more revolutionary while gaming in your opinion, Dan? The graphics, the resolution, frame rates going from 30 to 45 is standard to 45 to 60. Dan first, but then Tom, you answer too.
Well, gaming graphics, resolution, or frame rate. I mean, I would say upping frame rate standards is the biggest.
Immediately noticeable, maybe.
Yeah, because 1080p to 4K, it looks nicer. You get extra clarity. It looks better and everything.
Especially in the distance, like sniping or something.
Yeah. But frame rate really, especially 30 to 60, is a pretty revolutionary thing, especially for faster paced games.
Yeah, and it's, even, I'm trying to think, even like, the frame rates this late in this gen have just felt so much more stable to me too. Like playing Death Stranding on PlayStation 4, it's 30 frames, but it's such a locked 30 frames with static things in the distance with good motion blur that it's like, again, this is going back to the PS360 generation. I don't know if people understand how crappy settings they were putting up with for those games. Yeah,
that's what I'll say is I'm glad, and I guess we'll see with, I bet games like Cyberpunk 2077 and like The Last of Us 2, I bet those start to push the machines to the limit.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember playing The Last of Us 1 on the PS3 when it first came out, and that game had terrible settings, and I'm really glad that
its actual graphics were good, but almost no anti-aliasing.
Almost no anti-aliasing. You got decent frame rate drops on it. And it is nice that this gen, I feel like they've avoided that for the most part. That end of gen, I don't know, console, like last cough.
Yeah, they still work.
Like they're gasping for breath to run.
It doesn't feel like the current gen consoles are gasping for breath. Again, this gen, the PS4 and Xbox One, it's about quality of life. It really is more convenient to game now.
Yeah, I feel like because once we got to the Xbox One X, because Xbox One isn't a 1080p machine, but everything stronger than that was. And the Xbox One X is really about as strong as a machine you need for 1080p, I think. And that next hurdle to 4K, that's
a big hurdle.
Yeah, it's a big hurdle.
But I think the next gen consoles are going to hit it out of the park. I really think it's going to be like, people remember, no one really argued about resolutions in the PS360 gen. There were arguments, like I know I think Battlefield 3 was 720p on 360, 704p. They had lines you couldn't notice for PS3, but then it had MSA times 4 because of the cell processor. But no one really argued over those differences back then. I don't think we're going to argue next gen.
That was a really fun era early into the PS4, Xbox One gen when people were somehow debating which one was stronger.
That was the dumbest.
Yeah, I remember.
Next gen, they're much more evenly matched, at least in terms of rendering power.
I remember like the Order 1886 had a 1080p No, had a 1920 by what?
Oh, yeah.
21 by 9. And I was like, oh, the PS4 also isn't a 1080p machine.
Because
look at this one game.
Well, they had to make sacrifices on this gen for resolution sometimes, even with the PS4 oftentimes. And because it's a balance, if you want to go up to high settings, you really only need 900p. So depending on how hard the game is to run, what's going on in the background, you might make that compromise. And then in 1080p, if it's linear, okay, then we can afford ultra. But, I just don't think that's going to happen next gen. I think the settings are going to be pretty much cranked up. And there will be times, like I think, for instance, the Xbox will be probably a little better at more linear games. But I think the resolution difference is whether it's an open world game or a linear game, no matter which console has an advantage in certain types of games. I just don't think that debate really holds ground anymore. I think they're gonna. I think that's a thing of the past.
And I'm gonna be honest. Even if these machines are,
they're closer than the PS360 in performance.
Like these machines on paper are way stronger. Like what? About 5 times stronger than the base, 5 to 8 times stronger than the base consoles.
And the CPU is so much stronger. It's honestly like you almost have to wonder how you count it because it's at least 10 times stronger, I'd say.
But yeah, it's gonna make that jump to 4K, and I doubt people will care that much because I think 1080p is that resolution where once you get there, most people are generally happy.
They're happy. You can tell the difference after it, and I think there will be dynamic resolutions in next gen consoles. I don't really see them dropping to 1440p though. So it's going to be like
you'll probably see 1800p in some games, but
yeah, and I don't think anyone's going to care.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say. Is I feel like there's less of a hunger for a new console because we have 1080p. 1080p looks generally pretty good, especially if you have devs like Naughty Dog making Uncharted 4 and making Uncharted 4, and Uncharted 4 looks amazing even on the base PS4 because they're just really good at making a good-looking game with what they have. And I think that jump to 4K will look better, but a lot of people won't give that much of a shit.
Right. So Zen Plus, how's your 2700X been? Has it been that noticeable over Broadwell?
I haven't noticed too big of a difference yet. I get slightly better frame rates in some games that are CPU intensive, I think.
Is multitasking notably better, though? You have a Gen 3 SSD now. Maxed out Gen 3 as well.
Yeah, it's generally snappier. The SSD, I think, is a lot of what's been driving how good it's been. It loads way faster. I upgraded from 240 gigs to a terabyte, which is nice, of SSD storage. I upgraded now because I thought it was a good time to upgrade.
It's $150 for a 16-thread. Come on. With
8-core 16-thread consoles coming out in the next year, I think I'll want to be at least that for the foreseeable future.
And you can upgrade to Zen 3. So, all right. I think we basically covered all of it. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of you building or upgrading stuff? I think this is a good base level of all the stuff me and you have done the past 10 years. In addition to other stuff we've talked about.
The other big things I did is, and Tom did this too. I haven't done it for a while, but helping people build machines.
We're the person in the friends group that people ask questions to.
Which it was funny because one of my college friends asked me to help him build a PC, and he was like, "Well, I think I'll do this, this, and this." I can't remember all the things he did, but and I recommended other things to him, and 3 months after building, he ended up getting what I told him to get.
Yeah, that's so common. It's just like you slowly whittle them down and they're like, okay, you were right.
Yeah, I would say if you are that friend, make sure to set up a healthy balance, healthy distance, and try to help them become good PC gamers themselves so they don't constantly text you about stupid problems.
Yeah, you got to put out the ground rules early. You got to know when to just have harsh love and be like, you figure it the fuck out. So I don't have to help you every 5 seconds.
Like I remember one of my best friends from high school. He was like, what frame rate should I be getting in Battlefield 3? And I said, Google it. And
what do you have? Like, what are you talking about?
Well,
I just was wondering what you...
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know. I have a different card than you. I don't know what you should be getting.
Yeah. So I have two more reader mails, though, that I do want to get through. Nils writes in and he says, so we know that Zen 2 Mobile has a lot less N3 than Intel's Zen 2 AMD's Zen 2 desktop, but I realized that after watching several reviews of the 4900HS that I never saw anything that seemed to have a performance issue because of the lack of cache compared to the other chips. There were a couple I saw, actually, but for the most part, it's not affected, including gaming. I would assume the performance loss from moving from 32 megabytes of L3 cache in Zen 2 desktop to just 8 megabytes in Renoir is there somewhere, but I don't know where to look. And should it have less performance to the lack of cache? Well, the answer is yes, but you have to understand that Zen 2 has so much cache because it's chiplets and it has an I/O die. They have like a duplicate of L3 cache. It's an ingenious way to make up for what would be latency problems. So you need less cache on a mobile chip. And honestly, oftentimes with how dense mobile APUs are, they don't need as much cache to save on latency. That's honestly my answer.
I mean, I don't have too much to add to that. That was going to be, that's what my understanding was, but.
Yeah. Which will be interesting is to see if with Zen 3, if they just decide to increase the cache for their mobile chips as well and how much performance that will bring. But anyways, Avenger the 22nd writes in and he says, buckle up. I just got accepted to applied physics grad school. Based on my own education and love of sci-fi, I'd like to discuss how current 7 nanometer and smaller silicon manufacturing can be used for nanobot creation. Oh boy, I don't know if we're the guys to talk about this, but we'll continue. Assuming something like 3 nanometer EUV nanobots deployed as a nanobot mist in a given volume. Oh boy, we're getting... And then the necessary laser optics technology. Do you think this could pave the way to floating holograms like in Star Wars? Oh, I see what you're saying. I mean, maybe. There's some major weaknesses to that type of technology. Like if you walk in and breathe in, that could kill you. That's like nanoparticles can really do damage to the lungs.
I also don't like nanobots floating everywhere. So,
I mean, yeah, Metal Gear Solid 4 really scared me. And yeah, it says this idea uses each of the bots as a 3D pixel in space that emits light and receives it and reflects it to the other bots near it to form images. Yeah, I mean, I think look, theoretically that should work, but like I said, I think you could walk into that, breathe it, and die.
I can barely speak on this at all. I don't think that's the future.
Yeah, I mean, the solution in many ways is just finding a way to project a light that doesn't have to go directly into your eyes and makes a 3D shape in front of you, which is really complex stuff.
I mean, you see sci-fi, they always like default to some silicon-based technology when like I think an interesting little like tidbit, we were watching Westworld.
Yeah.
So I believe it's implied that someone was geotagged in their blood by just injecting a protein. They don't use a machine. That's just a protein that geotags people, which maybe that's possible. Like, I think all these nanobot technologies, like for human biotech, I think in the future, those would just maybe be biological innovations.
Yeah, that's something I've seen. Yeah, I mean, I think so too. I think it's going to be synthetic, biotic things that we'll use more so than nano silicon, although there might be both. But he says, really what I'm asking and saying, there's a lot, Dan, is that nanobots can be designed today and manufactured in 4 years or so, have so many applications for everything like the boldest, most impossible sounding ideas humanity has ever had. Anyways, talk about nanobots. Well, we have a little bit. I don't think we're getting that in 4 years.
I don't
think we're getting that in 10 years.
I mean, they showed that they can like do that AI coordination stuff with like drones to do a light show.
Yeah.
So if you can scale
doing that with 8 million, I guess it might not be.
If you can scale those up to being a pixel, to having a ton of nanobots and scale the processors necessary down, I guess it might be possible.
Yeah, and maybe this mist idea would work as long as they're in a cube. Because again, I'm telling you, this thing's going to have some major R&D and performance and longevity problems if they're not self-contained.
And a lot of people Skype sounds fine.
Oh, yeah, if you could project a Skype face with them, maybe.
No, I think people just being like, the monitor for Skype is fine, I think.
Well, it depends on a cost. If I could actually have you appear in front of me, I'd prefer it.
I guess that's true.
Would you not? You want these bullshit flat 2D people, Dan?
I mean, I think it's like with 2001: A Space Odyssey, they were like, yeah, we're obviously going to be going to Jupiter by 2001. When we were like, no, we just want flatter screens. That sounds way better than going to Jupiter.
Well, I'm sure we're going to want more than flatter screens soon. Now we have slight curves. Anyways, we're getting loopy. I'm going to collapse. I got no sleep, and then I turned out that giant Zen 3 and Zen 4 video and this today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all enjoyed it. And yeah, look out for the die shrinks. We've got some really fun scripts we've put together with reader mails from you guys. So yeah. Any last words, Dan?
No, I think I talked a lot this time. So
that's good. Tom, did I cut you off too much? Tom cut him off. Oh, let your guest speak.
I think I spoke enough. So
I felt there was a real communicative synergy between us.
Ooh.
All right. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there, folks. And goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
The following podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother, Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, and select technical editing by Carbon Cry. You can find all of our information, including how to get a hold of us, at www.mooreslawsdead.com. And if you are a fan and would like to send mail or other hardware, please mail parcels to Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 10468, Peoria, Illinois 61612. And speaking of fans, without exaggeration, the patrons are solely responsible for the continued distribution of the content you just listened to. And so if you have some extra money, but only if you do, please consider supporting us. For just $2 a month, you get access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to have your questions read aloud on Broken Silicon Die Shrink and Loose Ends, and of course, the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who would love to meet you. I am one of them. The Discord is only at $1, and at higher tiers, you get access to ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the back catalog of Flyover States podcast, thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts, and other perks as well. And if you cannot afford to support us, please just share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family on social media and Reddit. And give Broken Silicon and Flyover States a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. All of this really does help so much more than I think anyone realizes. If you'd like to advertise on the podcast or a person of interest who would like to be a guest, please reach out to the email address mlhbdead@gmail.com. But as I said, this podcast would not be possible without its fans supporting it. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher producer levels. Bootman, Carbon Cry, Dean, Benny Berlin, Justin Yant, Thomas Rupp, I Love You, Lynn and Jim Bollocks, Jordan Betcher, Muhammad Al-Kawari, Frederick Lau, Gribbeth, Justin Parrish, Zachary Martin, Terrence Herod, Brad Medlin, Phil S., Thyrister, The Ninth Grood, Greg Renegar, John Bible, Chrysantine, Night Rogue 77, The Mechanical Philosopher, Lebo King Kilo, Fatboy Diesel, Daniel Hyde, Matthew McMullen, Christoph Novak, Neil X01, Matt Salem, Aaron Close, Sexy, Scott Shope, Sadler, Richter Kohagon, Alethros, Telos, Caden Picknell, Greg T. Wanchik, Jacob Barber, Exoti, Wendy Kerber, Matthew Lane, Paul Jones, Jan Rauner, Rubber Ducks, Edward Huff, Ali Robertson, Gordon Lamb, Jonathan, Drita Full, Evan Dingle, Nick Neasy, Dominic Dewart, Harold P. Bureau, Wayne, Sam MacArthur, James Crasta, TSPCFS, or Tispiti, Michael Costa, Andrew S. BI Past, Total Silo. Of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.